In the heart of a vibrant city filled with towering buildings and endless energy, there lived a woman named Michelle Carter. She was not just any woman, she was a trailblazer. Michelle had worked tirelessly for years to rise above challenges and carve out her own path in a world that often underestimated her. As one of the few black CEOs in the automotive industry, she stood as a shining example of determination and resilience. Her journey began in a small town where opportunities were scarce, but Michelle always dreamed big. With grit and perseverance, she turned her vision into reality by building a successful car dealership from scratch. Her dealership quickly became more than just a place to buy cars. It was a symbol of hope and possibility. For many, especially young people of color, seeing Michelle at the helm of such a thriving business inspired them to believe in their own potential. The showroom gleamed with rows of sleek vehicles, each one representing countless hours of effort and sacrifice. Employees admired her leadership style, which balanced firmness with kindness, and customers appreciated how she prioritized fairness and transparency in every transaction. To everyone who crossed her path, Michelle embodied success. Not just financial success, but the kind that comes from staying true to your values, even when it's hard. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Michelle decided to pay an unannounced visit to her dealership. She hadn't been there in person for a couple of weeks due to meetings and travel, and she felt it was important to check in on operations firsthand. This time, however, she chose to dress casually, wearing faded jeans, sneakers, and a simple leather jacket. It wasn't about impressing anyone. She wanted to blend in, to observe how things ran without drawing attention to herself. Little did she know that this decision would lead to an experience she'd never forget. As Michelle walked through the glass doors of the showroom, she expected to be greeted warmly by her staff. After all, this was her company, a place where she had poured her heart and soul. But instead of friendly smiles or nods of recognition, she found herself met with silence. At first, she thought maybe no one noticed her entrance because they were busy assisting other customers. So, she wandered around, taking in the familiar sights and sounds of the bustling showroom floor. Eventually, a young man approached her. He wore a neatly pressed suit and carried himself with confidence, clearly someone in a position of authority. Michelle recognized him immediately. He was one of the newer sales managers she had hired recently. His name badge read, Greg. Without giving her a second glance, Greg asked curtly if he could help her. Michelle smiled politely and said yes, explaining that she wanted information about one of the luxury cars parked near the display window. She pointed toward the vehicle and waited for his response. To her surprise, Greg hesitated before answering. His tone shifted slightly, becoming colder. "I'm sorry," he said, avoiding eye contact, "but we don't have time for people like you right now." The words hit Michelle like a punch to the gut. For a moment, she couldn't believe what she was hearing. People like her? What did that even mean? Confusion quickly gave way to anger as the weight of his statement sank in. Was he really refusing service to her based on appearances? Here she was, standing in her own dealership, the very business she had built from the ground up, and being treated like an outsider. Michelle took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Part of her wanted to confront Greg right then and there, to reveal her identity and demand answers. But another part of her held back. Something inside told her to stay calm and watch, to see if this behavior extended beyond her interaction alone. So, she nodded silently and stepped aside, pretending to browse through brochures while keeping a close eye on Greg. Over the next hour, she observed as other customers entered the showroom. Each one received a warm welcome, complete with handshakes and enthusiastic pitches about the latest models. Greg laughed and joked with them, offering test drives and discounts without hesitation. Watching these interactions unfold only deepened Michelle's frustration. Why was she treated so differently? Was it her casual attire? Or was it something deeper, something rooted in prejudice? As much as it hurt to stand there unnoticed and disrespected, Michelle knew she needed proof before taking action. Quietly, she pulled out her phone and began recording subtle details of the scene unfolding around her. Every dismissive glance, every preferential treatment given to others, it was all captured discreetly on video. These moments would later serve as undeniable evidence of what had transpired. By the time Michelle left the dealership that evening, her mind was racing with emotions, anger, disappointment, and sadness among them. Yet beneath it all, there was also resolve. She realized that this incident wasn't just about her personal experience. It reflected a larger issue that needed addressing. Racism and bias weren't confined to certain spaces or industries. They could creep into any environment, including ones you might least expect. Michelle knew she couldn't let this slide. Not only was it unacceptable within her company culture, but it also sent a dangerous message to employees and customers alike. Change had to happen, and fast. That night, Michelle replayed the events, over and over in her head. She thought about all the sacrifices she'd made to get to where she was today. The long nights spent strategizing, the rejections she faced early in her career, the battles she fought to earn respect in a male-dominated field, all of it came rushing back. And now, here she was, still fighting the same fight, but in a different form. It dawned on her that this moment could either break her spirit or fuel her mission to create lasting change. There was no question in her mind which path she would choose. The following morning, Michelle arrived at the dealership earlier than usual. She called for an emergency meeting with her entire team, knowing that swift action was necessary. As employees filed into the conference room, whispers filled the air. No one knew exactly why they had been summoned, but the tension was palpable. When Michelle finally spoke, her voice was steady yet charged with emotion. She recounted her experience from the previous day, holding nothing back. Gasps echoed throughout the room as people processed what they were hearing. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed, and a few appeared genuinely upset. By the end of her speech, the atmosphere was heavy with reflection. Without missing a beat, Michelle announced her decision. Greg, the sales manager responsible for the discriminatory behavior, would be fired immediately. Her reasoning was clear and unwavering. His actions contradicted everything her company stood for: respect, inclusivity, and equality. Allowing such behavior to go unchecked would undermine the values she had worked so hard to instill in her team. The room fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. While some may have anticipated consequences, no one expected the situation to escalate so quickly. But Michelle's message was loud and clear. There was zero tolerance for racism or bias under her leadership. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Within hours, local media outlets picked up the story, turning it into headlines across social media platforms. People everywhere weighed in, praising Michelle for her bold stance against discrimination. Many viewed her swift action as a powerful statement against systemic racism, particularly coming from someone in such a high-profile position. Supporters hailed her as a hero, applauding her commitment to justice and accountability. Social media. Posts flooded timelines with hashtags celebrating her courage trending nationwide. For many, Michelle's response served as a reminder that standing up for what's right can spark meaningful change. However, not everyone agreed with her approach. Critics emerged, accusing her of overreacting or exaggerating the situation. Some argued that Greg's comment might have been misinterpreted or taken out of context. Others suggested that firing him was too harsh a punishment for what they deemed a minor mistake. But Michelle refused to entertain these perspectives. She understood that staying silent or brushing off discriminatory behavior would only perpetuate the cycle of injustice. Instead, she leaned into the controversy, using the platform it provided to advocate for broader societal change. Through interviews and public statements, she urged businesses everywhere to confront biases head-on and foster environments where everyone felt valued and respected. In the months that followed, Michelle implemented sweeping changes within her dealership. New training programs focused on diversity and inclusion became mandatory for all employees, ensuring that everyone understood the importance of treating each customer fairly, regardless of race, gender, or background. These initiatives went beyond surface-level workshops. They encouraged open dialogue and self-reflection, challenging individuals to examine their own biases and assumptions. Slowly but surely, the culture of the dealership transformed. Employees grew more mindful of their interactions, and customers noticed the difference. Sales numbers soared as word spread about the dealership's renewed commitment to equity and fairness. Meanwhile, Michelle's influence extended far beyond her own business. Her story resonated with people around the globe, cementing her status as a prominent figure in conversations about leadership and social justice. Invitations poured in from conferences, universities, and corporate events, eager to hear her speak about overcoming adversity and driving change. Michelle's mind buzzed with thoughts as she drove home that evening. The events of the day replayed in her head like a movie stuck on repeat. She kept picturing Greg's dismissive expression, the way he avoided looking her in the eye, and the coldness in his voice when he said, "We don't have time for people like you." Those words echoed endlessly, each repetition stinging more than the last. Michelle had faced discrimination before, subtle comments, questioning glances, assumptions about her abilities, but never had it happened so blatantly, especially not in a place where she was supposed to feel powerful and in control. As she parked her car in the driveway, Michelle realized she couldn't let this go. This wasn't just about her feelings being hurt, it was about setting an example. Her dealership wasn't just a business, it was a community, a space where everyone should feel welcome and respected. Allowing such behavior to slide would send the wrong message to her employees, her customers, and herself. Sitting alone in her kitchen, she pulled out her laptop and began typing notes. She wrote down everything: what Greg said, how he acted, and how differently he treated other customers. Then she reviewed the video footage she had recorded earlier. Watching it again made her stomach churn, but she knew it was crucial evidence. The next morning, Michelle arrived at the dealership before anyone else. She wanted time to think and prepare for what lay ahead. By now, she had decided on two things. First, Greg needed to be held accountable for his actions, and second, the entire staff required retraining to prevent similar incidents in the future. But firing someone wasn't a decision Michelle took lightly. She valued fairness and believed in giving people opportunities to grow. Still, there were lines that couldn't be crossed, and Greg had crossed them. As employees trickled in one by one, they noticed their CEO pacing near the entrance, deep in thought. Something was clearly up. At 9 a.m., Michelle called an emergency meeting in the conference room. The atmosphere grew tense as everyone gathered around the table. Some looked curious, while others seemed nervous. No one knew why they had been summoned so suddenly. When Michelle finally spoke, her tone was calm but firm. She started by thanking her team for their hard work and dedication. Then, without hesitation, she recounted her experience from the previous day. Every detail, the casual outfit, Greg's rude remark, the stark contrast between how he treated her versus other customers, was laid bare. Gasps filled the room as employees processed what they were hearing. A few glanced at Greg, who sat frozen, his face pale. Michelle didn't stop there. She played the video footage she had captured, showing the stark difference in treatment. It was undeniable proof of what had happened. The room fell silent as the clip ended. You could almost hear a pin drop. Michelle then explained why this incident mattered so much. "This isn't just about me," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "It's about our values as a company. We stand for respect, inclusivity, and equality. If we allow moments like this to happen unchecked, we're failing, not just ourselves, but our customers and our community." Her words resonated deeply, with many in the room, though some still looked uneasy. Without pausing, Michelle announced her decision. Greg would be fired immediately. She emphasized that this wasn't punishment for making a mistake. It was accountability for violating the core principles of the company. "I hired you because I believed in your potential," she told him directly, her gaze unwavering. "But your actions yesterday showed me that you don't share the same commitment to fairness and respect that we do here. And that's something I can't ignore." Greg tried to defend himself, mumbling excuses about being busy or misinterpreting the situation, but Michelle cut him off. "There's no excuse for treating someone poorly based on assumptions," she said firmly. With that, Greg was escorted out of the building, leaving behind a stunned and reflective group of employees. The rest of the meeting focused on moving forward. Michelle outlined plans to implement new training programs centered on diversity and inclusion. These weren't going to be generic seminars, but interactive sessions designed to challenge biases and foster empathy. She also announced the creation of an anonymous feedback system, allowing employees and customers to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Change starts with us, she reminded her team. We have to hold ourselves accountable every single day. Employees nodded, some visibly moved by her words. Though the mood remained somber, there was also a sense of renewed purpose in the air. Word of the incident spread quickly after the meeting. Local news outlets caught wind of the story and turned it into headlines within hours. Social media erupted with reactions, both positive and negative. Supporters praised Michelle for taking decisive action against discrimination, calling her a role model for leaders everywhere. Many shared personal stories of facing bias in professional settings, expressing gratitude for her courage in speaking out. Hashtags like accountability matters and our lead by example trended online, amplifying her message. For countless individuals, Michelle's response served as a beacon of hope, a reminder that standing up to injustice could create ripples of change. However, not everyone agreed with her approach. Critics argued that firing Greg was too extreme, suggesting that a warning or suspension might have sufficed. Some dismissed the incident altogether, labeling it a misunderstanding or accusing Michelle of exaggerating its significance. Online debates flared up, with comment sections divided between those defending her actions and others criticizing her decision. Yet through it all, Michelle remained resolute. She understood that criticism came with leadership, especially when addressing sensitive topics like racism. Rather than engage in arguments, she focused on amplifying her message of inclusivity and accountability. In the weeks that followed, Michelle threw herself into transforming her dealership's culture. New training sessions were introduced, led by experts in diversity and inclusion. Employees participated in workshops that encouraged open dialogue, self-reflection, and understanding. Role-playing exercises helped them practice handling difficult situations with grace and fairness. At first, some employees resisted, feeling uncomfortable discussing topics like race and privilege. But over time, they began opening up, sharing their own experiences and learning from one another. Slowly but surely, the workplace dynamic shifted. Conversations became more honest, relationships stronger, and mutual respect more evident. Customers noticed the change too. The dealership's reputation soared as word spread about its commitment to equity and fairness. Sales numbers climbed, higher than ever before, not because of flashy promotions, but because people trusted the company's values. Families brought their friends, recommending the dealership as a place where everyone felt seen and respected. Even longtime clients commented on the noticeable improvement in customer service. For Michelle, this validation reinforced her belief that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, always pays off in the end. Despite the progress, Michelle knew the journey wasn't over. Racism and bias weren't issues that could be solved overnight. They required constant vigilance and effort, but she felt hopeful. Hopeful that her actions had sparked meaningful conversations not just within her company, but across industries. Hopeful that others would follow her lead in confronting discrimination head-on. And most importantly, hopeful that her story would inspire others to stand up for what's right, no matter how daunting the challenge might seem. Through it all, Michelle remained steadfast in her mission. She continued speaking publicly about her experiences, using her platform to advocate for systemic change. Whether addressing packed auditoriums or chatting with small groups, she spoke with authenticity and passion. Her message was simple yet powerful. True leadership means standing up for your values even when it's uncomfortable. And sometimes the hardest moments in life become the ones that define us and push us to make the world a better place. The days following Greg's dismissal were a whirlwind for Michelle. While some employees rallied behind her decision, others struggled to adjust to the changes sweeping through the dealership. Conversations about diversity and inclusion weren't easy topics to tackle, especially in an industry where such discussions had long been ignored. But Michelle refused to let discomfort stand in the way of progress. She reminded herself daily that meaningful change rarely came without resistance, and that her role as a leader was to guide her team through it. To ensure everyone felt supported during this transition, Michelle scheduled regular check-ins with her staff. These weren't formal meetings but casual conversations over coffee or during breaks. She wanted to hear their thoughts, fears, and concerns firsthand. Some employees admitted they didn't fully understand why addressing bias mattered so much. Others confessed they worried about saying the wrong thing and offending someone unintentionally. Michelle listened patiently, offering reassurance when needed and gently challenging perspectives when necessary. "It's okay to feel unsure," she told them. "What matters is that we're willing to learn and grow together." As part of the new training initiatives, Michelle invited guest speakers to share their insights with the team. One speaker, a civil rights advocate named Lisa Monroe, left a particularly strong impression. During her presentation, Lisa shared personal stories of facing discrimination in various professional settings. She spoke candidly about how small actions, like avoiding eye contact or using dismissive language, could perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Her words struck a chord with many employees, who began recognizing subtle biases they hadn't noticed before. Afterward, several team members approached Lisa to thank her, admitting they now saw things differently. Despite these positive steps, not everything went smoothly. A handful of employees resisted the changes, grumbling under their breath about political correctness, or claiming the training sessions were a waste of time. Michelle knew pushing too hard might backfire, so she chose a different approach. Instead of confronting them directly, she assigned mentors, trusted senior employees, to work closely with those struggling to adapt. Through one-on-one guidance and encouragement, even the skeptics slowly started coming around. It wasn't perfect, but progress was being made. Outside the dealership, public interest in Michelle's story continued to grow. Journalists reached out for interviews, eager to learn more about her leadership philosophy and the steps she'd taken to address the incident. Michelle agreed to speak with a few select outlets, knowing it was an opportunity to amplify her message. In each interview, she emphasized the importance of accountability and creating inclusive environments. "Leadership isn't just about making profits," she explained. "It's about setting standards and showing people what truly matters. Respect should never be optional. It's non-negotiable." Her words resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. Social media buzzed with praise for her courage and integrity. Countless messages poured into her inbox from strangers sharing their own experiences with discrimination and thanking her for taking a stand. Many highlighted how rare it was to see corporate leaders address racism so openly. For Michelle, reading these notes reinforced her belief that speaking up could inspire others to do the same. Yet amidst the accolades, she remained grounded, reminding herself that true impact came from action, not applause. Back at the dealership, the effects of the changes became increasingly visible. Customers noticed a difference right away. Where once interactions had felt transactional, they now felt personal and genuine. Sales representatives took time to listen, asking thoughtful questions and tailoring recommendations to individual needs. Employees greeted every person who walked through the door with warmth, regardless of appearance or background. The shift in energy was palpable, transforming the showroom into a space that radiated positivity and inclusivity. One afternoon, a young woman named Jasmine entered the dealership, visibly nervous. She hesitated near the entrance, glancing around as if unsure whether she belonged there. Spotting her, one of Michelle's top salespeople, Marcus, approached with a friendly smile. "Hi there. Can I help you with anything?" he asked warmly. Jasmine relaxed slightly and explained she was looking for her first car, but felt intimidated by the process. Marcus immediately put her at ease, walking her through options and answering all her questions patiently. By the end of their conversation, Jasmine left thrilled, not only because she found the perfect vehicle, but because she felt genuinely valued as a customer. Stories like Jasmine's became common. Word spread quickly, drawing in more buyers who appreciated the dealership's welcoming atmosphere. Sales figures soared, surpassing projections month after month. Yet for Michelle, the financial success was secondary. What truly mattered was seeing her team embrace the values she held dear. Watching them interact with customers in ways that reflected empathy and respect filled her with pride. It was proof that doing the right thing didn't just benefit individuals, it strengthened entire communities. Even as momentum built, Michelle stayed focused on the bigger picture. She knew fostering inclusivity wasn't a one-time fix. It required ongoing effort and commitment. To keep the momentum alive, she introduced monthly workshops where employees could discuss challenges and celebrate successes. Topics ranged from cultural sensitivity to conflict resolution, ensuring everyone remained engaged and informed. Michelle also encouraged open communication, urging employees to voice concerns or suggest improvements whenever needed. "We're all learning," she often said, "and the more we share, the better we'll get." Her dedication inspired others to take initiative too. One employee, Sarah, proposed starting a mentorship program to support women and minorities interested in careers in the automotive industry. Another, Jamal, suggested hosting community events at the dealership to build stronger ties with local residents. Both ideas were implemented, further solidifying the company's reputation as a force for good. Through these efforts, Michelle's dealership evolved into more than just a business. It became a hub for connection and empowerment. While the transformation was remarkable, Michelle never lost sight of the challenges ahead. Racism and bias were deeply ingrained issues that couldn't be eradicated overnight. There would always be moments of tension, misunderstandings, and setbacks. But Michelle believed that perseverance was key. Every step forward, no matter how small, brought her closer to the vision she had for her company and for the world. She often reminded herself of something her grandmother used to say: "You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails." Adjusting her sails was exactly what she intended to do. In quieter moments, Michelle reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful day when Greg dismissed her in her own showroom. What had started as a humiliating experience turned into a defining chapter of her life. It taught her valuable lessons about resilience, leadership, and the power of standing firm in your convictions. More importantly, it showed her that adversity could be a catalyst for growth, not just for herself but for those around her. As she looked at her thriving dealership and the team she'd nurtured, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was more than success. It was purpose. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Michelle faced it with optimism. She envisioned a future where companies everywhere prioritized inclusivity and equality, creating workplaces where everyone felt seen and valued. And while she knew she couldn't single-handedly solve systemic issues, she believed that every action counted. Each training session, each difficult conversation, each act of kindness rippled outward, inspiring others to join the movement. For Michelle, that ripple effect was everything, a reminder that even the smallest efforts could spark monumental change. Through it all, Michelle kept moving forward, driven by a simple yet profound belief that true leadership meant leaving the world better than you found it. Whether mentoring her team, advocating for justice, or simply treating others with dignity, she lived this philosophy every day. And as she stood watching her bustling showroom, one filled with laughter, collaboration, and mutual respect, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. As weeks turned into months, Michelle's dealership became a beacon of transformation, not just in the automotive industry but in the broader community. The changes she implemented weren't just policies written on paper. They were living, breathing practices that reshaped how people interacted with one another. Customers noticed the difference immediately. Where once there might have been rushed or impersonal service, now every interaction felt thoughtful and genuine. Employees went out of their way to make sure no one left feeling unseen or undervalued. It was as if the entire atmosphere of the dealership had shifted, becoming warmer and more inviting. One day, a man named James walked into the showroom. He was older, dressed in worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt, and carried himself with quiet humility. At first glance, some might have assumed he wasn't a serious buyer. But Michelle's team approached him with the same enthusiasm they showed everyone else. They asked questions, listened carefully, and offered suggestions tailored to his needs. By the end of the visit, James purchased a reliable sedan that fit his budget perfectly. Before leaving, he pulled aside one of the salespeople and said, "I've been to other dealerships where I felt like I didn't belong. Here, you treated me like family. Thank you." Those words stuck with the employee, and eventually reached Michelle, who smiled, knowing her efforts were making a real impact. The positive feedback kept pouring in, both from customers and employees alike. Many workers expressed gratitude for the training sessions, saying they'd gained new perspectives they never expected. One employee, Tamika, shared during a workshop that she used to feel uncomfortable speaking up when she witnessed unfair treatment. Now she felt empowered to address issues directly, confident that her voice would be heard. Another, Carlos, admitted he hadn't realized how often unconscious biases influenced his behavior until the training opened his eyes. These moments of growth reassured Michelle that the work she was doing mattered deeply, not just for the business, but for the individuals involved. Outside the dealership, Michelle's influence continued to expand. She received invitations to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate events across the country. Each time she stepped onto a stage, she carried the weight of her experiences with her. Her speeches were raw and honest, filled with stories of struggle, resilience, and triumph. She didn't shy away from discussing the painful incident with Greg. Instead, she framed it as a turning point, a moment that forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about bias and accountability. Audiences listened intently, many nodding along or wiping away tears as she spoke. Her message resonated because it was universal. While her story was unique to her journey, the themes of injustice, courage, and change struck a chord with people from all walks of life. After one particularly moving presentation, a young woman approached Michelle backstage. She introduced herself as Lisa, a college student studying business. "Your story gives me hope," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "I want to be a leader like you someday, but I'm scared of facing discrimination. How do you stay strong?" Michelle paused, considering her answer carefully. Then she replied, "You don't have to be fearless to lead. You just have to keep going even when you're afraid. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it." These interactions reminded Michelle why she chose to share her story publicly. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about creating ripples of inspiration. Every person she encouraged could go on to encourage others, multiplying the impact exponentially. Still, she remained aware of the responsibility that came with being in the spotlight. Critics occasionally surfaced, questioning whether her actions were motivated by self-promotion rather than genuine concern. Some accused her of using the incident with Greg as a publicity stunt. While these comments stung, Michelle refused to let them deter her. She knew not everyone would agree with her approach, but staying true to her values meant accepting that not everyone would understand. Within the dealership, the culture of inclusivity continued to flourish. Employees began taking ownership of the company's mission, finding creative ways to reinforce its principles. For example, a group of staff members organized a fundraising event to support local organizations fighting racial inequality. Another team launched a social media campaign highlighting diverse voices within the automotive industry. Even small gestures, like displaying posters celebrating cultural heritage months, added to the sense of belonging. Michelle watched proudly as her team embraced these initiatives, realizing that leadership wasn't just about directing, it was about empowering others to take charge. Customer loyalty soared as word spread about the dealership's commitment to fairness and respect. People drove from neighboring cities specifically to buy cars from Michelle's team, citing the welcoming environment as a key factor. Repeat customers became ambassadors, referring friends and family without hesitation. Sales numbers reflected this surge in trust and satisfaction, breaking records month after month. Yet for Michelle, the financial success was merely a byproduct of something far greater, building a community rooted in shared values. Despite the progress, Michelle understood that the fight against bias was ongoing. Racism and prejudice weren't problems that could be solved overnight. They required constant vigilance and effort. To ensure the momentum didn't fade, she introduced quarterly reviews to assess the effectiveness of the diversity programs. Employees participated in anonymous surveys, providing candid feedback about what was working and what needed improvement. Michelle took their input seriously, making adjustments based on their suggestions. This collaborative approach fostered a sense of ownership among the staff, reinforcing the idea that everyone played a role in shaping the company's future. One evening, as Michelle sat in her office reviewing reports, she found herself reflecting on the journey so far. What started as a humiliating encounter had transformed into a powerful movement, one that extended far beyond the walls of her dealership. She thought about the countless lives touched along the way, employees who grew more confident and empathetic, customers who felt valued and respected, and strangers inspired by her story to challenge injustice in their own lives. In many ways, Michelle realized, this chapter of her life had become bigger than her. It belonged to everyone who believed in the possibility of change. Yet, even as she celebrated the victories, Michelle stayed grounded in the reality of the challenges ahead. There would always be skeptics, naysayers, and moments of doubt. Progress was rarely linear, and setbacks were inevitable. But Michelle had learned to embrace the imperfections. She knew that true growth came not from avoiding difficulties, but from facing them head-on. And with each obstacle overcome, she grew stronger, as a leader, as a person, and as an advocate for justice. Looking around her bustling showroom, Michelle felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for her team, who worked tirelessly to uphold the company's values. Gratitude for her customers, whose trust fueled the business's success. And gratitude for the lessons she'd learned along the way. Lessons that reminded her of the power of resilience, empathy, and determination. As she locked up for the night and headed home, she couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to make a difference. And Michelle was ready. The months rolled on, and Michelle's dealership became more than just a place to buy cars. It transformed into a symbol of hope and possibility. People from all over the city began stopping by, not necessarily to shop, but to see what everyone was talking about. They wanted to witness firsthand the environment Michelle had created, an inclusive space where respect wasn't just promised, but practiced daily. Strangers would walk in, look around, and leave with smiles on their faces, struck by the warmth and professionalism of the staff. Some even wrote glowing reviews online, praising not only the quality of service but also the sense of belonging they felt during their visit. One rainy afternoon, a young couple entered the showroom, holding hands tightly as if drawing strength from each other. They were visibly nervous, glancing at the luxury cars with uncertainty. One of Michelle's newer hires, Maria, noticed them right away and approached with a warm smile. "Hi there. Can I help you find something?" she asked kindly. The couple hesitated before explaining that they were looking for their first car, together but worried they couldn't afford anything decent. Instead of dismissing them, Maria listened patiently and walked them through affordable options, highlighting features that suited their needs. By the time they left with keys in hand, their relief and happiness were evident. Later, they sent a handwritten thank you note, calling the experience life-changing. Stories like this became commonplace, reinforcing Michelle's belief that treating people with dignity could have a profound impact. Her team didn't just sell cars, they built relationships. Employees took pride in going above and beyond for customers, whether it was helping someone navigate financing options or simply offering an umbrella on a stormy day. These small acts of kindness added up, creating a reputation for excellence that extended far beyond the dealership's walls. Word-of-mouth recommendations flourished, bringing in new clients and solidifying loyalty among existing ones. Meanwhile, Michelle continued expanding her influence beyond the showroom. She accepted invitations to speak at events nationwide, sharing her story and advocating for systemic change. At one conference, she addressed a packed auditorium filled with business leaders eager to learn how to foster inclusivity within their own organizations. Michelle spoke candidly about the incident with Greg, acknowledging her initial shock and anger but emphasizing the importance of turning pain into purpose. "When we face injustice," she told the crowd, "we have two choices: Let it break us or use it to build something better. I chose to build. Her words resonated deeply, earning standing ovations and sparking meaningful conversations. Afterward, attendees lined up to speak with her, asking for advice on implementing diversity training programs or handling bias-related incidents in their workplaces. Michelle answered every question thoughtfully, offering practical tips while reminding them that real change required patience and persistence. It's not about perfection, she said. It's about progress. Start somewhere, even if it feels small, and keep moving forward. Back at the dealership, Michelle remained committed to nurturing her team's growth. She introduced monthly recognition awards to celebrate employees who exemplified the company's core values. Recipients weren't chosen based on sales numbers alone, but on how well they treated colleagues and customers. This shift in focus encouraged healthy competition, not to outperform others, but to uplift them. Employees began collaborating more, sharing strategies and supporting one another rather than viewing each other as rivals. The result was a cohesive, motivated workforce that thrived under Michelle's leadership. Outside work, Michelle found herself reflecting on the broader implications of her journey. She realized that her fight against discrimination wasn't limited to her dealership. It was part of a larger movement toward equity and justice. Inspired by this realization, she partnered with local nonprofits to host workshops aimed at educating young people about career opportunities in industries traditionally dominated by certain groups. Through these initiatives, she hoped to dismantle barriers and inspire the next generation of leaders. Despite the successes, challenges still arose. Occasionally, old habits resurfaced among employees, requiring gentle reminders about the importance of inclusivity. A few customers voiced complaints claiming the dealership's emphasis on fairness was unnecessary or excessive. Michelle handled these situations calmly, using them as teachable moments to reinforce her commitment to equality. She understood that change wouldn't happen overnight, but she refused to compromise her principles. One evening, as Michelle prepared to close the showroom, she received an email from a former employee named Jamal. He had moved on to another job but wanted to express his gratitude for everything he'd learned under her guidance. "You taught me what true leadership looks like," he wrote. "Because of you, I know I can make a difference wherever I go." Reading those words brought tears to Michelle's eyes. It reminded her that her impact stretched far beyond the confines of her business, into the lives of those she touched directly and indirectly. In quieter moments, Michelle allowed herself to dream bigger. What if other companies adopted similar practices? What if entire industries embraced inclusivity as a standard, rather than an exception? These questions fueled her determination to keep pushing boundaries. She envisioned a future where workplaces reflected the diversity of the world around them, a future where no one had to endure the sting of discrimination because systems were designed to protect and uplift everyone equally. To stay inspired, Michelle surrounded herself with people who shared her vision. She joined a network of female executives dedicated to promoting gender and racial equality in leadership roles. Together, they exchanged ideas, supported one another, and amplified their collective voices. Their camaraderie reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight, that countless others were working tirelessly toward the same goals. As the year drew to a close, Michelle organized a special event at the dealership to celebrate the milestones achieved. Employees gathered in the showroom, decorated with balloons and banners to reflect on the progress made and set intentions for the future. Each person shared a personal story about how the changes had impacted them, from gaining confidence to feeling empowered to speak up against injustice. Tears flowed freely as they laughed, hugged, and cheered for one another. For Michelle, it was a powerful reminder of why she did what she did, to create spaces where people could thrive without fear of being judged or dismissed. That night, as Michelle drove home, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Yes, there were still obstacles ahead, and yes, the road to true equality remained long and winding. But she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, leading not just a company, but a movement. Every step forward, no matter how small, mattered. And as long as she kept moving, she believed she could inspire others to do the same. The new year brought fresh energy to Michelle's dealership, along with a renewed sense of purpose. The changes she had implemented were no longer just initiatives. They had become part of the fabric of the business. Employees greeted each day with enthusiasm, knowing their work mattered not only for sales but also for creating a better world. Customers continued to flock to the showroom, drawn by the reputation of fairness and respect that now defined the company. It was clear that Michelle's vision had taken root, transforming the dealership into something far greater than she could have imagined when she first started. One morning, as Michelle reviewed the latest sales reports, she noticed an unusual trend. A significant number of customers were returning, not to buy additional cars but to thank the team personally. Some brought homemade treats or small tokens of appreciation, while others simply wanted to share how much the experience meant to them. One elderly man named Mr. Thompson stopped by with his granddaughter. He explained that purchasing a car from Michelle's dealership had been one of the most positive experiences of his life. "I've never felt so respected in all my years," he said, shaking Michelle's hand firmly. His words stayed with her throughout the day, a reminder of why every effort was worth it. Inspired by these interactions, Michelle decided to take things a step further. She launched a community outreach program aimed at giving back to the neighborhood that had supported her journey. Every month, the dealership hosted free car maintenance workshops for local residents, teaching basic skills like changing tires or checking oil levels. These events attracted people of all ages and backgrounds, fostering connections that went beyond transactions. Michelle also partnered with schools to offer scholarships for students interested in pursuing careers in automotive technology. Her goal was simple: to empower others while breaking down barriers in an industry often seen as exclusive. Meanwhile, Michelle's influence continued to grow outside the dealership. She became a sought-after speaker, traveling across the country to share her story and advocate for change. At one event, she addressed a room full of high school students, many of whom came from underrepresented communities. She spoke passionately about overcoming obstacles and staying true to your values, encouraging them to dream big despite any challenges they might face. Afterward, a shy teenager approached her, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't think someone like me could succeed," she admitted. "But hearing you talk makes me believe I can." Moments like this reminded Michelle of the ripple effect her actions created, inspiring countless individuals to pursue their dreams fearlessly. Back home, Michelle remained deeply involved in nurturing her team's growth. She introduced mentorship, programs pairing seasoned employees with newcomers, ensuring knowledge and values were passed down effectively. Regular feedback sessions allowed everyone to voice concerns or celebrate successes openly, fostering a culture of transparency and trust. Employees began taking ownership of projects, proposing innovative ideas to enhance customer experiences and promote inclusivity. One group even suggested hosting cultural exchange days, where staff members shared traditions and stories from their diverse backgrounds. These initiatives strengthened bonds within the team and enriched the workplace environment. Despite the progress, Michelle knew there would always be moments of resistance. Some critics still questioned whether her focus on diversity and inclusion detracted from the bottom line. Others dismissed her efforts as unnecessary or overly idealistic. Yet Michelle refused to let negativity deter her. Instead, she leaned into the criticism, using it as fuel to prove doubters wrong. When skeptics claimed inclusivity couldn't coexist with profitability, she pointed to the dealership's skyrocketing revenue and glowing customer reviews as evidence otherwise. "Doing the right thing isn't a distraction," she declared during an interview. "It's what drives sustainable success." As time went on, Michelle's legacy extended beyond numbers and accolades. She became a role model not just for aspiring entrepreneurs but for anyone striving to make a difference in their corner of the world. People admired her ability to balance ambition with compassion, proving that leadership wasn't about wielding power, but about lifting others up. Her story served as a blueprint for tackling injustice head-on, showing that courage and determination could turn adversity into opportunity. In quieter moments, Michelle reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful day when Greg dismissed her in her own showroom. What had once felt like a devastating blow had transformed into a defining chapter of her life, a moment that forced her to confront uncomfortable truths and emerge stronger. Through resilience and perseverance, she turned pain into purpose, inspiring those around her to do the same. Looking at her thriving dealership and the team she'd nurtured, she felt immense pride. This was more than success. It was fulfillment. Yet Michelle understood that the journey was far from over. Racism and bias weren't issues that could be eradicated overnight. They required constant vigilance and effort. To ensure the momentum didn't fade, she committed to lifelong learning, attending workshops and seminars to stay informed about best practices. She encouraged her team to do the same, emphasizing that growth was a continuous process. Together, they embraced challenges as opportunities to evolve, knowing that true progress came from persistence. One evening, as Michelle sat in her office, reviewing plans for the upcoming year, she paused to look out the window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the bustling city. She thought about the countless lives touched by the changes she'd made, employees who found confidence, customers who felt valued, and strangers inspired to challenge injustice in their own ways. In many ways, Michelle realized, this chapter of her life had become bigger than her. It belonged to everyone who believed in the possibility of change. With a deep breath, Michelle smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to make a difference. And Michelle was ready. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she also knew that every step forward mattered. Whether mentoring her team, advocating for justice, or simply treating others with dignity, she lived her philosophy daily, that true leadership meant leaving the world better than you found it. As she locked up for the night and headed home, she carried with her a profound sense of hope, for herself, for her community, and for the future.